Hey Techno Studs, in our next module, we're going to be talking about IP version 6 and how IP version 6 overcomes some of the weaknesses of IP version 4. Similar to other modules, there's a lot of information that needs to be covered with IP version 6. So once again, I've broken this down into a lot of smaller videos so we can hit each one of these topics and they build off of each other. So go through each one of these topics. What are the things that we're going to cover is, first of all, just a general overview of IP version 6. What does it look like? And we'll talk from a very high level several of these other components that we'll then further get into these other videos. So this is more of a basic overview about IP version 6. Then we get a little further in depth into IP version 6 addresses, specifically about what the format is of the address and what to expect, what the differences are between IP version 4 and IP version 6 addresses. Then we take a look at the headers, the packet headers. So we're going to take a look at IP version 4 and IP version 6 packet headers, take a look at the differences, and then get more in depth into what the IP version 6 packet header looks like. Then we'll talk about different address types. When it comes to IP version 6, there's several different address types. So we're going to take a big overview look at what those address types are, and then we'll start digging a little further into what those individual address types look like. And one of those address types that we'll be talking more in depth about is IP version 6 multicasting. So there's quite a few nuances in the differences with IP version 6 multicasting and some of the addresses that are assigned for multicasting. So let's go take a deeper dive into that. Then we're going to take a look at the link local address and how the link local address is created. So it's similar to IP version 4 link local address, but it's much more core to how IP version 6 operates. So let's take a look at the link local address and how it's created. One of the ways it's created is using this EUI64. And so we'll talk further into EUI64 and how it generates the link local address. Once we've established the link local address, then we'll start talking about neighbor discovery protocol. There are some things that have gone away from IP version 4 to IP version 6 that no longer exist. And neighbor discovery protocol helps assist in a lot of covering what some of the needs are there. So let's get in depth into neighbor discovery protocol, or NDP. And then once we get an in-depth look into neighbor discovery protocol, we're going to take a deep dive into NDP neighbors and how that neighbors are created within NDP, and then also NDP routers. So we're going to take a higher look at neighbor discovery protocol, dig deeper when we talk about NDP neighbors, and then we'll talk about NDP routers, and then we'll take it a step further when we talk about Slack, which utilizes NDP routers, and we'll talk about Slack and how it assigns global addresses within the IP version 6 address space. So we'll talk about Slack. And then we have this transition that needs to happen. We have implemented IP version 6 on many of our networks, but not all networks have IP version 6 enabled yet, so we're still on IP version 4. And how do we transition from one to the other? There's several ways that we've helped implement this transition. So we'll talk about the transition from IP version 4 to IP version 6. So let's get started. Let's dive into IP version 6, and thanks for joining me on this journey.